This week on Words and Numbers, illegal tweets.
What happens if we roll back the tariffs?
The Fox Newsmax debate.
And people move in response to taxes.
All this and more this week on Words and Numbers, a CiVL original podcast.
Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Anthony.
And this is Words and Numbers.
Check us out every week, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 a.m. Eastern. Ant, what's new and exciting in your world this week?
Well, the big news this week is the appeals court that ruled, on the one hand, that President Trump overstepped his authority in imposing the tariffs, and on the other hand, said that the tariffs are going to stay in place until the Supreme Court reviews the case. So now we're all waiting to see what happens. And you and I had discussed in at least one earlier episode the legalities involved with a president imposing tariffs. What I want to think about is what happens if the Supreme Court rules that the tariffs were unconstitutional, they get rolled back, and then opens the door for somebody to say, well, give us back the tariff revenue that we paid in. And of course, that somebody is more likely than not to be companies. And
right, not the people who paid the tariffs exactly.
This is where life gets rather interesting. The fact is, when you impose tariffs like that, the tariffs, at least in part, and a lot of economists would say in large part, the tariff gets passed on to the consumer in the form of higher prices. And any of us who have gone to the store recently and bought something that was either imported or was used imported goods in its making understand that the tariffs have jacked up prices of things. So on the one hand, the companies pass the tariffs on to the consumers. On the other, if all of a sudden the government has to hand back these tariffs and the companies are the ones that have their hands out saying, okay, give us back all of this money that we paid in, they're not going to turn it over to the consumers. In fact, there's nothing, to my knowledge, there's no economic force that's going to cause them to want to pass them back to the consumers, like there was an economic force that caused them to want to pass the tax on to them in the first place. And so, when we're all done here, what we may well end up with is a 6 to 9 month unconstitutional economic policy that had the net effect of taking money from consumers at large and handing them to shareholders.
Yeah, I want my money back. Let's be real clear about
You aren't getting anything.
Yeah, no, that's right. As usual, I'm left holding an empty bag. And let's also be clear that we did an episode on this with Phil Magnus, who has been way out in front on this issue for a very long time. So give Phil a look if you want to see what's really going on. This is a disaster in the making, but it's been a disaster in the making right from day one.
Well, it's been a disaster from day one, and the thing is, economic experts, political science experts have all said the same thing, that this is a disaster, and we're going to pay for it one way or the other.
And I'm left to point out who could have predicted such a thing, and the answer is, once again, us, and this time with Phil.
Right.
So here we go. I want to take our attention abroad, something that I rarely do. I'm on record as saying that I'm not terribly comfortable criticizing other people's governments. That's for them to do, not us. And yet this one is so ridiculous that I think we have to. There's a comedian or a TV writer, depending on how you like to look at things, by the name of Grant Linehan. You ever hear of him?
No.
Probably not. A lot of Americans haven't. He's a Brit. And he made a bunch of tweets, which I think we're supposed to call posts now, on X, not Twitter, wherein he criticized various aspects of the trans rights movement. And you would think, well, he's probably going to be in for a healthy dose of criticism when he gets home. But they arrested him instead.
Oh my, really?
Yes. His tweets were termed hate speech, illegal, whatever the Brits call this kind of nonsense. And they rounded him right up, having left the great state of Arizona, where I currently reside, going back to Great Britain. They rounded him up and put him in jail.
Yeah, I over the past 3 or 4 months have gotten on the kick of watching British police dramas. And it's shocking to me every time it happens, but invariably there's something in there that someone's arrested for saying something or writing something. And it's shocking to me as an American. We have it deep down, this freedom of speech. I have to remind myself, wait, this isn't the United States.
Yeah, it's strange because I've been watching this new nonsense play out in Great Britain, whereby people are arrested for flying various British flags.
Really?
Hear what I just said.
We're making it against the law to burn it, and they make it against the law to fly it.
Yeah, the West is not united in its opinions on these matters. But it seems to me, an outsider, and I hope some of our British listeners will chime in on this, it seems to me that the Brits are making everything prosecutable except actual crime. Well, I mean, what the hell is going on over there?
We really can't be pointing fingers there.
I just pointed a finger.
But no, well,
I'm going to continue.
My point is, we have a long history of calling all sorts of things for which there is no victim a crime.
And I am long on record as pointing my fingers at those things too. So I think I've earned the right to ask the Brits why you can't say things and why you can't fly a British flag. These just don't seem to be complicated questions. Perhaps somebody from the British government would like to come on over and explain to us what the hell is going on over there.
Yeah, but for God's sake, don't go over there and ask them.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking that given my Twitter output, I might not be welcome. I guess we'll all find out one day when I have a connection at Heathrow.
Get Words and Numbers on CiVL.com and on CiVL's TV and mobile apps. Regular episodes are free. Sign up for an annual membership to support our show and for access to member-exclusive content.
That was not, incidentally, the foolishness of the week, so we are brought to the foolishness of the week, which involves Fox News, of all things, and Newsmax. Two conservative, I guess I don't even like to use the word conservative anymore, too right-leaning. That doesn't capture it either. Two news sources. No, wait, that's no good either. Wow, this is harder than it first appears. Two cable television channels that are unlike CNN and MSNBC in meaningful political ways, and very similar to one another. There, I think I did it. I don't think anything I just said is a lie. Anyway, Newsmax is suing Fox News.
Because?
Go ahead, ask me why. Go ahead.
Why?
Because Fox News has a monopoly on the conservative news market, and it's involved in unfair competition.
How do you have a monopoly on the news market?
Oh, no. They have a monopoly on the conservative news market.
How do you have a monopoly on that?
Yeah. Allow me to read from the web article that I found, and I'm going to read from one from NPR, which, of course, will make everybody angry. But you can go find your preferred outlet. They're all covering this. The suit alleges that Fox Corp engages in at least 3 anti-competitive practices, imposing explicit or tacit no-carry provisions for competing right-wing outlets as it strikes deals for cable providers to offer Fox News to subscribers, requiring those that carry Newsmax or other competitors to carry Fox Business and sister outlets, and in inserting what Newsmax's legal team calls contractual barriers intended to prevent Newsmax and others from competing.
Well, stated that way, it does sound like something akin to non-competition.
We're going to have some fun here. And let's keep in mind that both Fox News and Newsmax have both been sued by 2 voting machine companies. And three of those 4 lawsuits have been settled by Newsmax and Fox. So now they're just going to turn on each other after all of the election denying that they both did.
So I wonder which one claims the mantle as being the true conservative media outlet, and
who the hell?
And
who the hell
do
cares?
they claim it by being further to the right or further to the center?
Again, who the hell cares? This is just going to be hilarious, and I can't wait until the Trump administration weighs in on this at a press conference in some kind of off-the-cuff way that muddies the legal waters beyond all repair.
Oh, you know that's coming.
Oh, of course I know it's coming. And I literally can't wait. I am actually going to start watching both of these channels to see how they themselves cover this lawsuit. Good fun for everybody. Anyway, what do you got this week?
Well, an interesting thing, there's a data set, and I've worked with it from time to time over the past, good Lord, maybe 20 years. And this data set tracks people's let me be careful about my wording here. It tracks people's movements across states. What I mean by that is not that they're tracking actual people, but rather it's coming from the IRS, and the data set indicates when a given person has filed a tax return in one state one year, in a different state the other year, indicating that they've moved from one state to the other.
Yeah, there's a couple of things to say here. It's inflows and outflows.
Right. It's going in both directions.
And what gets us on this topic is the Tax Foundation released a graphic which takes it from the state level to the county level. It's really interesting. And keep in mind that this data is, I believe, from the Tax Foundation. It's not only from the IRS, it's from Census. Mm-hmm. So they've combined a couple of data sets to get a fuller picture. And it's 2020 to 2022.
Right.
Because there's a real lag in this kind of data.
Oh, yeah.
As we've talked about data lag before, and it's important to mention it again here. This isn't what happened last year. This isn't about Biden and Trump, right? Well, maybe it is in some way, but not in the most immediate sense. But nonetheless, we've got a fuller picture now than we had before.
Yeah, and I'll say a lot of these things, people kind of will get on to me from time to time demanding the latest data. And a lot of economic data doesn't change that much year to year. In fact, I did this study both at the county and the state level back in 2011. And directionally, the results we got are the same as what you're seeing here.
Yeah, not a big surprise, right? Because the question to ask, and it's weird too, because the data is muddied a bit, right, when families of 6 move.
Right.
Because, and you see how that would complicate matters, right? How do you count that outflow? Is it 1? Is it 6? Right?
Yeah, and to the extent that you're using IRS data and everybody in the households filed under one filing, that's what's tracked. So actually, that's a better way to say it. It's not the people that are being tracked, it's the filing that's being tracked.
But with the addition of census data, now people are being tracked.
Oh, you can add some color, some census-like color to it. Yeah.
And color is exactly the right word to use when you look at the county map. And we've all gotten a little more familiar with county maps as we have considered presidential elections, right? We look at the red and blue counties instead of red and blue states, and you get a radically different answer, right? Turns out almost all the counties are red.
There's an interesting
But almost all the counties that have lots of people are blue, right?
There's an interesting thing that happens with economic data in counties, And that is that under certain circumstances, the data is effectively blanked out. For example, you can be dealing with a county, and there are 3,000 of them, right? Most of them rural. You could be dealing with a county that has a small enough population that when you start to say things like how many households here earn over $1 million, well, now you're at, if there's only 3 or 4 of them, the data can actually identify precisely who that is. So in those instances, they'll blank out the data. So you'll get holes here, depending on what it is you're looking at. But as you talk about migration, keep in mind here, the data is very rich. It shows, at the county level is even richer, but at the state level, it shows movement from state A to state B and from state B to state A. So with 50 states, that's 2,500 different directions, if you think of all the combinations in and out amongst each of the 50 states. So there's a tremendous amount of richness in this data. It's unlike, for example, saying, well, people moved from west of the Mississippi to east of the Mississippi. It's hard to say why that would have happened because there are so many things going on. And there's only one movement there from point A to point B. But if you've got 2,500 movements, now you can start to look for interesting commonalities. And one of the commonalities that stands out, and I wrote about it, and they write about it here in Tax Foundation, is differences in taxes.
Well, let me give you the 5 states experiencing inbound migration. See if you can figure out what it is that links them all. Florida, Texas, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee.
Okay, so right off, I would look at that, not being an economist, and say, well, those are warmer states, maybe with the exception of Tennessee.
States.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all southern states.
Yeah.
So people are going from north to south. They're also going from the far west to the not so far west, right? We get lots of inbound Californians here in Arizona, and our friends in Texas are getting quite a few of them there.
Am I correct that the states that experienced the most net outbound were California and New York?
Outbound migration, top 5, Louisiana, California, Illinois, New York, South Dakota.
Yeah.
It's odd that we haven't talked about Illinois, because Illinois as a state is an utter train wreck.
It is, but interestingly, and in my current job, I go to Illinois frequently and speak with people there, and I get the sense from the people themselves that when you think of Illinois and problems, economic, political, what have you, it's really not Illinois you're talking about. It's Chicago.
It's Chicago.
We found that when we looked at gun ownership, gun violence rates. Chicago pulls the whole state in one direction as far as the statistics go. But as soon as you get out of Chicago, things look very different.
It really does. But the budgetary problems that Chicago brings are profound. Right? It's hard to let the entire state off the hook when you see what they have to do, the cartwheels and the gymnastics they have to do to make it all work. And I suspect that we're going to get there with New York City before long, too.
Yeah, very much so.
I mean, in a lot of ways, we already have. But New York City isn't the same kind of drain on New York that Chicago is on Illinois.
Yeah, and even so, I used to live in upstate New York, and this would have been, good Lord, 30 years ago or more. And even back then, it was just a thing. People in upstate New York would shake their heads and say, yeah, they wish New York City would just break off and be its own state.
Break off. I lived in upstate New York myself from 2001 to 2005 or 6, something like that. And in every place I lived in every year I lived there, that was exactly what people were saying then too.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, right? Because you talk a lot about the right of exit. And we typically talk about that at the national level, right? That we should be able to leave a country and go to another one. And we all know that that's really not quite possible. So when people say goofy things like, if you don't like it here, you should go. Well, all right, Rufus, where am I supposed to go?
Yeah.
Where's this magical land that I can just leave and go to?
Without having to get somebody's
profoundly
permission or pay a bunch of money.
Well, or both of those things. You're generally going to have to do both of those things. And it's probably going to be more than you've ever had if it's a place that you want to go to. And it's probably going to take you a very long time.
Right.
So generally speaking, you live where you live, and tough shit. That's just how it is.
Well, I can give you one example of that. For a long time now, I've had a fondness for Portugal, and Portugal is one of the countries that, near as I can tell, has made it easiest for Americans to go there and become citizens. And
very friendly.
How easy is it to go there and become a citizen? You drop $250,000 on a piece of property, own it for 5 years, and then you're in line to be a citizen.
That's actually not a bad deal.
It's not, but to most Americans, that's $250,000. That's the cost of leaving.
Right. Now do Australia.
Yeah, no, I don't know anything about Australia.
You're going to need millions.
Really?
And you're going to have to do something for a living that they think is valuable and that they don't have enough of. Isn't that interesting? Pack of racists.
So in this...
Yeah, right.
On the one hand...
Let's dwell on that. Let's dwell on that for a minute. When we try in the United States to espouse, and I'm not saying you and I do, but when people do try to espouse something like the Australians have, we are referred to as racists. Are the Australians also racists? Or is that the right of a corporate people to determine who will and will not be allowed to join them? Yeah, that's well worth at least dwelling on in your minds for a minute. We don't have to make a big thing of it, but most countries have rather strict rules about who can come and under what circumstances.
And it's understandable if you think about it, particularly if you have a significant welfare component to the government. You want to be bringing people that are going to contribute or at least be a net zero to that system.
Yeah, and we try to do that here. And what's been the latest flare-up, and I think it's rather unfortunate, politically it's become acceptable to say that Indians shouldn't be allowed into the country, even though the Indians who come here have advanced, typically, mathematics and computer science skills that we don't have enough of.
Right.
And yet, I do actually see a lot of racist commentary about keeping Indians out because they somehow dilute whatever America is.
But, you know, all right, I can't let that go, because go back through our 200 plus years and you'll find that we were constantly being diluted. Someone would come, the Irish would come in and dilute. But then what happens? 2 generations later, there's no dilution. Why? Because you're part and parcel of what it is to be an American.
I'm Irish Italian. Neither of those groups was considered human when they arrived.
Yeah.
Now they're considered quote unquote white people.
Yeah. It reminds me, I had one of my favorite professors in college, he's one of these guys that he was so good. I took him for whatever he was teaching. It didn't matter. So I ended up in several courses on Chinese history, which again, I would have no interest in, except, he was teaching it. So I'm going to go and take this course. And I could recall him saying, the Chinese have never been conquered. And he says, if that statement is confusing to you, good, you understand Chinese history, because throughout their 1,000+ of years, many people have come in and conquered China. So what does he mean by the Chinese had never been conquered? That the conquerors end up adopting the Chinese culture. And several generations
Chinese.
Later, they end up being Chinese. Right. Yeah.
That's it.
And so too, I think the Americans. I mean, we're not
Yeah,
we're not
in a
monolithic
lot of ways.
in that sense. But when you think about what it is that makes us the same Americans, it's this entrepreneurial spirit, the sense of people aren't going to tell me what to do. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to pull myself up. I'm going to be entrepreneurial. All of that, anybody who shares in that shares in the core of what, in my mind, makes an American.
Yeah, I would go a step further and say that America is a country founded on an idea. And if you accept the idea is true, congratulations, you're an American. It's that simple.
Words and Numbers is part of the CiVL network. CiVL is a streaming platform dedicated to upgrading civilization by exploring better ways for people to organize, innovate, and thrive. At CiVL, we believe that societies flourish when their members honor the civic equality of all people and engage with one another through cooperation. CiVL seeks great minds from around the world to share bold ideas for fostering healthy, dynamic societies. By creating space for honest disagreement among people who share a commitment to building a better future, CiVL offers a refreshing alternative to divisive punditry and insular echo chambers. Words and Numbers is freely available, but those who subscribe to CiVL will access exclusive content, including regular live streams and conversations with remarkable people who are working to build a better society. For more information and to subscribe, visit CiVL.com. That's CiVL.com. Use the code Words and Numbers, that's one word, for 50% off an annual subscription. We've gone a little bit afield.
But we've gone astray here, because we do have the right to exit, at least to some degree, here in the United States, right? We can go from one state to another anytime we feel like it. And God, I should count up how many of them I've lived in. It's quite a few.
Yeah. And we move between states for all manner of reasons. So we're not claiming here that there's
usually
one thing.
Well, it's usually financial. It's not always financial, but it's usually financial, right? It's about a job. It's about retirement.
Sure. And one of the many factors that comes in when you're thinking about finances is taxation.
Taxes.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so it's for that reason that from time to time when I think about retirement, immediately I think of Florida. For no other reason than that it sticks in my mind that they have no income tax. Now,
if you're retiring, what do you care about income?
Right. Well, it's not to say that I would move there, but it's something that sticks in my mind, right? And so, too, when it comes to taxes, this is one factor that weighs on people as they think about moving. And what I did in this study and what Tax Foundation is doing in theirs is to compare differences in taxation across the states to that migration. And, and I can only
throw a bit of trivia at you. Let me throw a bit of trivia at you. Most professional golfers and many professional athletes live in Florida.
Yeah.
Because they have massive incomes.
Right.
And it goes untaxed, right? There are other taxes that will get you in Florida. They have property taxes and all the rest. But if you have a multi-million-dollar income, you probably want to maintain your primary residence there.
But when you think about taxes, it's not just, we tend to think about the level. Are the taxes high or are they low? And that does matter. But sometimes what matters even more is not the level of the tax, but the form of the tax. For example, you could have a tax system that collects, let's call it State A. State A's tax system collects, in theory, the same amount as State B's collects. And yet, if State B's is a flat tax and State A's is a progressive tax, you're going to have people migrating out of State A. In fact,
and when you look at out-of-state migration and into-state migration, you're typically, very typically, looking at people with higher incomes.
Yes, and that's the next thing, that progressive taxes filter out, cause people to leave who are exactly the people you don't want to leave. That's most right. Productive.
You're alienating the people who would have paid the most into your coffers had your taxation scheme been what they thought fair.
Yeah, and that could become a big problem. For example, I just looked up the numbers. New York State, the top 1% of taxpayers in New York State pay 55% of New York State's income tax. And
This is not the group you want to anger.
It's only 92,000 people. More than half of the state's income tax revenue is coming from 92,000 people. Piss those people off, and you've just lost a huge chunk of your tax revenue.
Yeah, let me ask you a hypothetical question. How much longer do you think Wall Street will be the economic center of American life?
Oh, that's a good question. I would imagine
it's got tradition on its side,
right?
But they'd all be better off in Houston.
They would be, but with the way things are becoming remote, it's entirely possible that most of them will end up in Houston. We'll just still call it Wall Street because that's where the computers seem, reside.
I think it'll happen in my lifetime, where we no longer refer to Wall Street as that place. I don't know. It's just a guess, right? It's an informed guess, but it's just a guess.
So too Hollywood, for similar reasons.
Well, and that's been happening, I think, in dribs and drabs for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's a robust Toronto film industry. You do well in Atlanta, right? And what you end up finding is that these places are luring productions in with gigantic tax breaks,
right,
that they don't give to all the other businesses in the state, right?
Pittsburgh used to do that, yeah.
Pittsburgh, and it causes its own set of problems, right? Because why not the guy who sells hot dogs to the actors who are working on the movie set?
Right, yeah.
Right. Why just the movie production? Why not everybody? But that's neither here nor there. I mean, look, I've lived in Connecticut. I've lived in Massachusetts. These are states that rich people don't want to live in anymore. Now, there's a level of wealth, Ant, that if I won that jackpot, you can bet that I would move or have a living arrangement of some kind in Boston by the end of the month. Right? There's a level of wealth where it just doesn't matter anymore. But if I won $1 million, I would get as far away from Boston as I could possibly get.
Right, yes.
Because you have to be reasonable about these things, right?
In
many parts of the country, you can retire on $1 million. In many other parts of the country, New England, New York, Eastern Pennsylvania, you're going to slowly bleed dry.
Yes. Let me go back to tax level versus form. So form is, level, of course, is the number. Form is the manner in which you collect it. And one of the things that we have found is that progressive taxation is a bad form. It alienates the more productive people, send them out, and what happens is you get into this weird spiral. California is feeling this now.
Yeah.
California's income tax system is so progressive that once you become a highly productive person, you're making into the six figures, there's a tremendous economic incentive to leave. And so as the productive people do that, California has to respond by making its tax system even more progressive, which puts even more pressure on people leaving. Before you know it, you have a problem like I was looking at the growth in California's year-to-year growth in their tax revenue. It swings widely. And I'm just looking going back to roughly 2010, 2012, year-to-year change in the tax rate. And I mean, think about your household income. Our household incomes change year to year, but you don't expect it to change that much, unless something horrible happens, right? Plus or minus 5%, something like that, perhaps. California, their tax revenue has swung back and forth by as low as negative 23% to as high as positive 47%. Now,
and they've got massive outflows.
Yeah, and so what's going on there? Your tax revenue is becoming so incredibly volatile. It becomes difficult to write a budget because you have no idea what your revenue is going to be. Your revenue is volatile because so much of it has come to depend on so few people because it's so progressive.
Yeah, and some people are paying a lot of attention to Gavin Newsom right now for all kinds of reasons, both good and ridiculous. And one of the things that they love to say is, well, he's had a surplus in California. Yeah, till the data was revised.
Yeah.
Right? Until all the data came in, and then it turns out there was no such thing as... Right?
Yeah.
And it's always like this. People draw conclusions long before they should. And then when presented with evidence to the contrary, they just double down on their foolishness.
And even then, I don't trust state-level data that well. Not to say that there's anything wrong with the numbers themselves, but rather it's much easier at the state level to, how should I say, reclassify things.
Cook the books. Say it like you mean it.
For example, in Pennsylvania, would have been maybe 20 years ago or so. The politicians were claiming that Pennsylvania was in surplus and all of this stuff, and so therefore we can spend more money.
And more money. Yeah.
What they had done is they had ignored the future pension obligations for teachers.
You and I
Just
wrote
took
about
it
this
right
a lot.
off the table. Right, yeah. I mean, that's okay. I'm not spending that money right now, but I'm going to have to spend it. I know I'm going to have to spend it. I need to account for it somehow.
It's like spending your entire paycheck the day after you get it and saying to yourself, I know I'm going to need food in the future, but that doesn't count.
Right. Look at how much money I made today. Right.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
It's really insane. And I think there's another pernicious element to progressive taxation because the tax collection varies so much. Politicians play with the tax code so much that you can't predict where it's ever going to be.
Right. Yeah.
So when you need to have a pretty good idea of what the level of taxation will be, both for your own purposes and for any business you might be starting, right? Now you can't.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's really dangerous.
Yeah, I've come to think of April 15th as the lottery. Sometimes I owe money, sometimes I get money back. I have no idea what's going to happen until I send the papers in.
And there seems to be no way to even predict it.
Right, yeah.
A stable tax code would be perfectly predictable.
But see, and who that hurts are the middle income, lower income people. If I'm a particularly rich guy, I can afford to pay accountants and lawyers. They'll figure it out for me. In fact, they'll come back and say, do this, this, and this, and we can make the number smaller. The regular person can't afford that. It becomes a tax lottery.
That's right. So what can you do? You can move.
Yes, you can move.
And people are moving, and they're moving a lot. I would dare say, looking at the data I'm looking at, we're probably moving more now than we have in a very long time.
In fact, I was looking at this on a regional basis for the United States population projections. And of course, we know that the U.S. population is topping out. It's going to start to decline. What I was unaware of until a couple of weeks ago is that the decline happens regionally. It happens first in the western states. They're going to see their populations start to drop off, and then it moves up to the middle states in the northeast. But the last one is the southeast. In fact, as far out as the projections go, the southeast is topping out but isn't coming down yet.
And that makes perfect sense, right? Because they've made it an attractive area to live.
Yeah.
And an attractive area to do business. So the more attractive it gets, the more people will go there.
And it is nice there. The weather's much better. You don't have the earthquakes. You do have hurricanes from time to time. But
hurricanes.
One thing that you do have in common across almost all of those southeastern states is a low, flat tax system.
And no snow.
And no snow.
Right.
So,
there are always non-economic things that really matter.
We've said several times about voting with your feet, of moving, leaving. And that has beneficial effects for you. You get to go and live under a better tax system than the one you came from. But it also has a beneficial effect for everybody who you left behind, because it forces the state's politicians to compete with the politicians of other states.
And the simple declaratory effect of an outflow is it's meaningful. Politicians see it. They know it's a problem. They have to address it.
Yep.
There's no two ways about it. And there you have it. Right? You want to make a big change? Move. And we talk, Ant, about the need for human respect and human dignity. What could lead to more of that, however you want to count it up, than people having the ability to escape a more tyrannical state government in favor of a less tyrannical state government? I mean, that's kind of the very definition of human dignity.
And I'll go a step further. That the reason we're escaping the more tyrannical government for the less tyrannical is that the more tyrannical governments have in place policies, here we're talking about taxes, but it probably applies to other things as well, policies that treat half the population as mouths to be fed, as problems to be solved, and the other half of the population treats as a resource, as wallets to be dipped into whenever we want.
I think of it as treating them as ATMs.
Yes.
You just wander up to them and you press some buttons and money comes out, and you never have to consider where it came from or why.
And that's, I would argue, that's dehumanizing to the people who are net taxpayers. But to the people who are net tax recipients, I think it's equally dehumanizing.
Also, maybe more so in a lot of ways. When you're told that you're just a problem that society has to solve.
Right.
Not that you're a human being who we would prefer to be flourishing.
Right.
Right. And because far too few of us flourish, given how many of us could. Is it ever going to be everybody? No, I think not. Could it be a lot more than it is right now? Absolutely it could be. Absolutely it could be. And that's the crime of it all. And this is the way you get to dig in your heels and point your finger, which finger is up to you, as you walk out of a state. And look, man, I don't think in my entire life, I mean, yeah, you hesitate to say this kind of thing because, children were born, you attended a wedding once upon a time, these sorts of things. But, above and beyond those sorts of things, about the happiest I ever was is when I saw the sign that said, "You're now leaving the state of California," when I moved out.
Yeah.
I actually burst out laughing as I drove out of that state. Couldn't wait to leave it behind. Every single part of it had come to annoy me. And look, I was just way out in front of it. I left in 1999. A lot of people have left since then, and even more are leaving now. And it's not just California. It's a lot of places just like California.
I've got a couple of notes here for our So What segment, and I think you've just trumped all of them with the single, what I would say the single takeaway from this is that when you do, and there will come a point in your life when you decide, I'm leaving wherever I am for somewhere else, and largely it's going to be for financial reasons, and taxes will matter. When you do this and you get to your new place that's better, think carefully about how you're voting and make sure that you aren't one of the people who contributed by your voting habits to the problem that you just escaped.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better. Couldn't have said it better. Although it's said in much more colorful terms here in Tucson, Arizona, as you might well imagine. Oh, I can't say the things they say about the Californians who come here and start voting in Californian ways. But there you have it. And, Look, I think we've probably got a lot of Gavin Newsom talk in our future, so I'm going to keep it to a minimum here. But he's presiding over a disaster of a state, and he wants to be president. Good luck with that. Now, I have to say that I think his mocking tweets of Donald Trump are absolutely hilarious. With the
I haven't seen any of them.
He is tweeting more to the point, somebody in his office is tweeting in the form of Donald Trump with all capital letters and crazy things and exclamation points everywhere. And it's absolutely hilarious. And it's a political masterstroke. It's catapulted him way in front of everybody else on that side of the aisle who's eyeballing the White House right now. I don't think he's going to be able to hold on to that mojo because he's going to have to answer a lot of uncomfortable questions about what's happened on his watch.
Yeah. And it's been a long watch as well, hasn't it?
It has. It has. And we'll see how it goes. I'm interested. But until we get back to that, I think we're probably just about done here. You got anything else you want to tell the people this week?
No, I think you've run through both pages of notes.
It's nice that you take notes and I can divine them from 2,500 miles away. Anyway, everybody should remember that everything we talk about, it's important, right? We wouldn't talk about it if it weren't important. But if this is the most important thing in your life, you're living wrong. Go find that thing that makes you happy within the bounds of good taste, decency, and the law, and do that more than you do anything else. Take a deep breath, consider your life a little bit, and be nice to each other. And until next time, Ant, I hope you have a great week.
See you next time, James.
Take it easy.
Words and Numbers is a CiVL original podcast. We work with CiVL to advance their mission of upgrading civilization by exploring ideas that promote civic equality and cooperation. We believe the most pressing issues humans face, war, poverty, debt, tribalism, arise from coercive institutions that bring out the worst in us. We at CiVL look to voluntary solutions to these and other problems. We invite you to explore CiVL's new platform at civil.com. That's CiVL.com.